everyone, it's Sevi. As we all know by now, Dendro has buffed so many characters and given many new synergies for us to experiment with. In this video, I want to put the spotlight on one particular character, Kokomi, to discuss how she fits so well into the Dendro meta. I have my full guide on Kokomi linked in the description, but that was made some time ago. Now we have new considerations, build options, and fun teams that increase her worth. But I want to make it clear that as much as Kokomi has amazing new synergies with Dendro Bloom teams, she's not a must-pull to create the best Bloom teams or Bloom teams in the first place. Those teams can work well with other Hydros, and new comps will surely continue to spring forth without Kokomi. Plus, we're getting 2 new Hydro units in 3.1, so wait for official info on that. The point here is that if you do have Kokomi, or if you want to get her, then you are getting some new exciting features and relevance with her, which makes me happy as a Kokomi lover. So let's dive into why Kokomi is better than ever. When looking at Hydro units for Bloom teams, one consideration is their Hydro application because we can identify them as slow or fast Hydro applicators. Whether you put on a fast or slow applicator just means that you have to take some considerations into your team comp and gameplay. But here are several reasons why Kokomi makes for a great Bloom teammate. Kokomi stands out as a slower Hydro applicator through her skill, and she can also provide added on-field Hydro application with her attacks if needed. Since Kokomi's Hydro app is slower, she won't get rid of the Dendro aura as quickly as other fast applicators. Controlling Hydro application means that you can be more deliberate with your order and priority of reactions. Kokomi's Jellyfish also has great AoE among off-field Hydro applicators, in contrast to someone like Xingqiu or Yelan. Her AoE allows simultaneous blooms off of multiple enemies and makes her a great choice for freeze teams, which we get to see more of even with Dendro. And her Hydro application can have 100% uptime in rotations due to her burst being able to refresh her Jellyfish while remaining mostly off-field. Aside from her particular Hydro application, Kokomi has another advantage. Quite a number of new Dendro teams I've encountered have the issue of needing to fit in a unit that helps you survive, whether a healer or shielder. As a healer, Kokomi consolidates Hydro application and healing already. Additionally, Bloom and Burgeon damage you as well, and while the damage is smaller than what it deals to enemies, if you add it up over time, that's not something to ignore. And Kokomi's persistent and strong healing should help cancel out the self-damage you deal, which is one more worry gone. Another advantage is that Bloom gives Kokomi a new avenue for contributing AoE damage. With Kokomi being a critless character, her Hydro damage contribution comes with a lower ceiling compared to other Hydro units. Kokomi's burst state attack string is also mainly single target. So, building more EM into her does not come at as much of a cost to her raw Hydro damage and can even produce better damage through blooms. Plus, Kokomi already heals so much that she still performs her healing function very well even if you reallocate HP or healing bonus stats to EM. Overall, prior to Dendro, Kokomi has already proven herself a good pick for comfortable survivability and enabling freeze and electrocharge teams, and her utilities there are finding even more use among Dendro teams. So, with the new Dendro teams and how much more emphasis there is on EM, one question for building Kokomi in such teams is if you should go for an EM-focused build or stick to her more traditional HP-focused build. It basically boils down to if you're using her in a pure Bloom/Fridge team or if she's in a Hyperbloom or Burgeon team. For a Bloom team, she's going to be the one proccing many blooms, so in that case, building EM on her is more recommended. If she's in a Burgeon or Hyperbloom team, her EM will matter much less as your Electro, Pyro, or in some cases Animo unit should be the ones triggering the reactions, in which case it depends on their EM stat, not Kokomi's. If you already have Kokomi and plan to use her in either team, your current build will likely be fine. It's easy to forget her ER, but maintaining the Jellyfish by using her burst to refresh it helps keep up the Hydro app and healing. If she's the only Hydro, 180 to 200% ER is a safe target, but this can be reduced by other factors. To match an EM-centric Kokomi build, you can give her sets like 4-piece Gilded Dreams and 2-piece EM combos. Remember that you only want this in a Bloom or Fridge team when Kokomi is the reaction trigger. But if Kokomi isn't the trigger, keeping her on Ocean Hued Clam or Tenacity will bring more utility. You can also consider giving her full Instructor set to buff your team's EM as long as she triggers its 4-piece effect on field. You technically can give her Deepwood also, but only if no one else on the team is already holding it, and it's likely that your Dendro unit already is. Her old top weapons still have amazing value on her, but there are some new weapon considerations with Kokomi on Dendro teams. The 3-star Magic Guide, which gives a fairly high EM substat, is usable for her Bloom team if you really have no other choice. Then there's the Sacrificial Fragments, and what you mainly want here is the EM stat. Well, it seems like on paper the passive is great since it allows you to refresh her skill cooldown. If you are concerned with rotation timing, note that the skill cooldown reset might desynchronize your rotation. But if rotation timing isn't much of a concern for you, then this will be a good choice. Lastly, I find the Fruit of Fulfillment a very niche but interesting choice. It helps fulfill both Kokomi's ER and EM needs if you're running her in a Bloom team. 45% ER addresses a chunk of her ER target, and the passive at R1 max stacks gives 120 EM, which is something. And since it's attack you're losing, it really won't affect Kokomi as much. The passive is easy to maintain since Kokomi should trigger reactions often enough both on field and off field. Finally, let's take a look at her new possible team comps and best teammates. To start off, Dendro MC is the top Dendro choice to pair with Kokomi because of how their cooldowns and uptime align well, and the Hydro-infused effect of DMC's burst is perfect for a Bloom team. In a Bloom team, your goal is to maximize Dendro core generation, so your other two teammates can be Hydro, Dendro, or Anemo, or any unit that won't mess up the Bloom reactions. Though I'd caution against putting another Hydro unit with only one Dendro unit, as that might create too much Hydro application, in which case the Dendro unit will proc the blooms instead. This could be kind of remedied by putting on another Dendro unit. Pure Bloom teams are somewhat winnable, though when testing it in the current Spiral Abyss, one issue was the enemies moving out of my character's AoEs. To address that, you can make a Fridge team by throwing in a Cryo unit like Rosaria or Kaya for their off-field cryo damage. Fridging also allows Hydro to more reliably proc the Bloom reactions due to how their interaction works. In this team, you want an EM build Kokomi, and Dendro teammates can also equip an EM build with Deepwood memories to get the resistance shred, which is very important in a Bloom team. Your Cryo unit can keep their typical DPS build, and an Anemo will want EM. Kokomi can also equip the Thrilling Tales here if you want to buff the Cryo unit's damage. I find Kokomi to synergize the best in these teams relative to Bloom's sub-reactions. She can enable freeze in an AoE, and she consolidates the role of core generation, healing, and DPS. In Hyperbloom and Burgeon teams, however, Kokomi's role becomes more focused on generating cores and healing, but loses her DPS role since she's no longer proccing the reactions. Regardless, she's still a comfy pick. Let's now look at Hyperbloom teams which need at least one Electro unit added in. By virtue of putting an Electro, you will get a few Quicken, Aggravate, and Electrocharge reactions here and there, but that frequency will depend on who you put, and remember that Hydro can get rid of a Quicken aura. Aggravates are achievable with certain units, such as Fischl, Beidou, or Sucrose, but it might be better to just go straight to a pure Quicken team than trying to stick to a Quick Bloom team. So for Hyperbloom, a controlled Electro applicator like Kuki works very well, or an off-field EM build Raiden whose skill procs actually hit cores. Yae will also give some Hyperblooms and get some Aggravates, as the splash damage from her skill and burst can proc both. If you want crowd controlling in a Hyperbloom team, you can stick in a Cryo or Anemo unit as the flex slot. These teams are generally not too difficult to play. You can Unga Bunga them as long as you keep your sources of elemental application up. For Kokomi's Burgeon teams, optimal Pyro teammates are Thoma and Xinyan in order not to overwhelm the Dendro cores and start proccing burning. Kokomi does complement Thoma well here because, with his shield health being reduced from his EM build, you will appreciate the added security Kokomi's healing brings. You just want to leave Thoma's abilities for last in the setup in order to not prematurely explode DMC's burst with Pyro. In either team, you have to stack the EM on your Electro or Pyro units for Hyperbloom Hyperbloom or Burgeon damage respectively, and Kokomi's build becomes more like her traditional builds here. Mixing all these elements of Dendro, Hydro, Pyro, and Electro could produce you a workable soup team and will likely have both your Pyro and Electro units proccing the reaction damage. Even with all these new team options already available to her, I hope future units and interactions will continue to expand Kokomi's possibilities. Anyway, that's going to be all for this video. Let me know in the comments if you've been enjoying Kokomi in these new Dendro teams or if you're considering pulling her soon. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!